and then I
Do you
will.
know Paul? Do you know Paul Kim?
Yes, yes, very well.
Yeah.
In fact, well, the last time I saw him was in Germany when I was living there, and he came to give an award, and yeah, and he has advised me, and I had classes with him.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had brunch on Sunday.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, I've
Um,
known Paul for a while.
okay, okay, good. I haven't spoken with him in a while, but I do like to keep up with him.
Yeah, he's
That's
a
great.
really good guy.
I know he's from the LA area.
Yeah, after I think they immigrated from Korea when he was probably about out of high school.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he grew up around here, and he went to uh, the Rossier School of Education at
Ah, that's
USC.
right. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay.
I think he did his doctorate there
I think
in a
so too.
program that does not really exist any longer on the kind of technology side, which is a shame. But
Okay.
uh,
Well, would you tell us about Ed Ventures, please? And
yeah, sure. So this little story, this goes back probably almost 20 years. So I had a venture fund on the East Coast, well, a couple, and just finished that up, and started to get interested in education technology. And the
ah,
first person I knew of um, to sort of bring folks together on that was a guy who's now actually my colleague uh, here in this program. And Doug was a vice dean at Penn. And
okay,
so it was about 17, 18 years ago.
okay.
He was the first person I knew of to bring together entrepreneurs, sort of innovators, policymakers, educators in education technology. And before that, he was bringing together students from Wharton and from the GSE school there,
Uh-huh.
and which was very unusual, hard to do with Wharton. And so that I see the GSV insignia there. So part of what came out of those meetings, so Deb Quazzo and Mike Moe
Yes.
took up the call to do the networking event. So this was over like 2 years. Um,
Ah,
and they turned that into ASU GSV. So Doug and I have been at every one from the beginning, including at ASU when there was about 100 people, maybe 150 the first one.
oh, and just recently it was thousands.
Yeah, yeah. They're amazing. So know them well. So that happened, and then a couple other things sprung out of that. But there was kind of like an incubator, ed tech incubator, and a business competition, ed tech business competition at Penn, and then one sprung up at NYU. Doug helped get that going, and I helped on the side. And around the dean of the grad school of education, Karen Gallagher, who just retired this past year, would come to these events, and we would talk about how we would do it differently if we
Mm,
could. And so finally, she just said to Doug and I, uh, kind of come to USC and do this. Prior to that, Doug had already signed on as faculty and left Penn, and so we're doing our third cohort. But when we put the program together, things that we decided to do differently are one is kind of reaction to education being more, um, I guess I would say more blended, but
mhm.
yet we were running incubator programs that um, required an entrepreneur to be physically at the program, which I think is great, but doesn't work for everyone,
Right.
and is costly. And also too, we thought that the curriculum programs just weren't very oriented toward pedagogy and evidence-based approaches. So what we did is and we're kind of like one size fits all. So we decided too that we'd have a curriculum that was more personalized.
Mm.
And at the start of the program, talk to the companies, figure out how we could help them the most, and then hear what we were doing toward each of them. Granted, there are things, many matters, like legal issues and so on that everyone has in common. And so we have workshops for that. But from the beginning, we were entirely virtual, except for our demo days. And one of those, Jack, you may be familiar with this, is USC Demo Day in February. And then the other one is Deb and Mike gave us sort of the only dedicated pitch event at ASU GSV. So we would have the companies at the end of the program. So starting in November, ending at ASU GSV, pitch there. So that was nice. Now all that kind of changed this year, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, which you'll appreciate, I remember sort of the last business plan competition I was most involved in it at NYU. We had it's probably like 150 applicants. Maybe 20 of them were women, and there was one African American guy. It was like, this is just what this makes no sense whatsoever. Most of the folks that you see as educators, practitioners, are women, and all the way up through HR programs. So we decided that we were going to have a program too that tried to serve women entrepreneurs and also entrepreneurs of color. So and interestingly enough too, our thesis was, if you just told them they were welcome, they would come, because they're not told they're welcome, or not told anything different than anyone else. And so in the first cohort, it's like 70% were women and people of color, the founders, and the second one was 90%. And we also, with doing the program virtually, we wanted it to be global. I worked at the World Bank in the 90s, and actually am back there again now. Long story, as a consultant. And Doug's father was in the State Department, so he was all over the place too. And so we have entrepreneurs or founders from all continents, but Antarctica. And so it's that kind of synergy that we try to build and do and try to be diverse from early childhood through kind of corporate education.
Oh wow! Okay.
And lifetime education. So we just tried to build a diverse cohort, and so now, since we've done that, I think others. One, COVID drove them all to be virtual. So like we do workshops every week, and they're virtual. And then we try also not to put a lot of emphasis on raising rounds, but as it turns out, even in not doing that, we also don't take fees or equity, because again, if we're trying to serve women and people of color, they're probably the ones least able to afford that. And have companies to run. So we don't want to require them to be at a a certain place. So
That's good.
yeah, that's sort of the program. We're still iterating on it. Probably will be for a while. It's not it's not a sustainable business model for sure. Um, and USC is wonderful. Jack probably know this at allowing you to be innovative, or at least was. Not very good at giving you money,
Uh-huh.
which is also Stanford maybe is an outlier on that one.
Mm,
But for all, yeah, okay. But for all other grad schools of education, they're incredibly poor compared to the rest of the universities. So then we also try and bring in, and the reason I asked you about the D school is we try and get bring in folks from the from Viterbi, the engineering school, which is a very good engineering school, and other colleague in this program, Anthony, is dual faculty at the School of Engineering and the School of Education. So, but we had mixed results with that, and
uh-huh.
even I think mixed results with getting faculty and staff from the Grad School of Education involved with what we do, and that's we have relationships with. With similar programs in Finland and Singapore, they all have the same problem. It's just the incentive structure is just
Uh-huh.
wrong,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and so that's an ongoing battle. Paul has the same thing at Stanford, but with the D School program, and that's just super unique.
Yes.
So yeah, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. It's a before introducing Dee Dee, I'd just like to clarify. It sounds like it's an incubator with a lot of great mentorship. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And when we try and try and connect you with those we think can be most helpful. But too, at the end of the day, Katie, it's we put a lot of the emphasis on the founder, and
Mm.
to pursue these avenues. We don't, again, we don't charge, and we don't take equity. And so that means we're not really, it's kind of a labor of love for me and for Doug and Anthony also. So, and then we have Sarah Lee, who's, you might know Sarah, she's a VC in Silicon Valley. And then also Kathy runs the Tiger Woods Education Foundation, which is in
Uh-huh.
Orange County. So yeah, so each of us have to have other jobs on the side,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we count on the entrepreneurs if they're to pursue these opportunities. We don't kind of hold their hand on it at all. And it is interesting. You'll in a cohort of like 15 companies,
No, but
just like in a VC portfolio, you find out pretty quickly who wants to
I
do the
can hear
work.
the value already. Anyone who grew up with someone in the State Department or who worked for the World Bank, you understand the value of exchanging culture internationally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially now when we can't,
Yeah.
doing it via an international film festival model is a pretty close facsimile and
Yeah,
one that
no,
could
I,
potentially stay on. And Jack and I were talking earlier that
Mhm.
what is beautiful, what Doug had the experience of as a child traveling with his family, is having that cross-cultural experience with your family. And that's what we're interested in with Screen 360 TV, especially now,
Mhm.
is swapping that culture from living room to living room, rather than separating the teens and giving them a teen culture and adults something else. I think there's a little bit of over marketing there. And so we're pulling it together so that there's not one more generation gap in the future. And
Yeah.
so with that, I want to introduce Dee Dee Pierce, who's on with us, and we see the big blue sky
Dee Dee.
behind her. She's traveling, and there she, whoop, she's certainly
I'm here.
there she is. There she is. She certainly understands keeping the generation gap from happening in her tenure of working with high school students and teaching history and social studies.
Wow.
Yeah. So with that,
Right.
we'd love to show you our
Hi,
deck.
thank you.
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
Sorry, Dee Dee.
It's okay. I just said thank you very much for meeting with us. This is wonderful. And yes, absolutely. I think the model that Katie's describing is definitely one that is even more important now than it ever has been before as we prepare kids for the 21st century. You know, the world is just so much more connected, and it's really, I think it's in our best interest, you know, as a society to provide this for kids. It's in their best interest. So yes, 100%. I have really unstable Wi-Fi here, so I'm sure I'm going to be in and out. I'm not, so I apologize for that. But thank you. Nice
No.
to be here.
But
No,
Dee
thank
Dee,
you.
tell
No.
us what sky is behind you. Where are you?
In Jamestown, New York, on the way
Oh.
back to Chagrin Falls, Ohio. Yes. Yeah. So
I was mentioning to Katie and Jack, I drove across country, and yeah, it was just so intermittent.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
if you're in if you're in, you know, the middle of nowhere, New York State, yeah.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. But
Good luck.
it's
It's pretty remote.
it's great to see. It's great to see, though. It just reminds you of the variety of differences in the U.S. across America. Just the experiences kids are having in these rural communities versus San Francisco or L.A. or wherever. And it's like, okay, like, but everyone needs this. You know, all kids need this opportunity.
Yeah.
So yes, I love road trips. So this is fabulous. But anyhow, thank you so much for being with us. Okay.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Let us show you our, I'm gonna put you back on mute there, Dee Dee. There we are, and there we are. Oh.
So I have to ask. So how did you connect with Jack at USC?
Well, Jack was not wasting any time and was taking entrepreneurial classes at Stanford during the summer so he could stay with his folks. And Jack, why don't you tell a little more of that story?
Yeah, because I'm really interested in entrepreneurship. So I applied to Stanford in the spring and then got in, and I was just looking at all the opportunities they had, and I was doing these networking things. Steve Blank, basically created the lean startup model, has this program called Hacking for Recovery, and I went to a few of the mixers, and there was Katie who was pitching Screen 360, and right away, right after I heard her pitch, I reached out to her and said I love this idea because I also minor in cinema, and I just loved the idea, and we collaborated, and then Dee Dee met both of us on another call, and then we did the Hacking for Recovery program together in July, I think.
Early July, it was
early
the end
July.
of June, yeah.
Yeah, end of June, early July. So that was a week of interviewing customers, basically 8 hours a day. And then we pivoted a little bit, and we've been working together ever since. So it's been a fun journey.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, really. I mean, it was supposed to be a week-long intensive, but we actually started like 3 weeks before July and getting to know each other and preparing, because really you had to hit the ground running in that 1 week. And so we did. It was great that Jack and Dee Dee both recognized that's what it took, and were really generous and made a 2-foot commitment immediately. And 2-foot commitment
That's
is
great,
when
yeah.
you're there with both feet and committed. So that is where we met. And then Dee Dee and I afterwards went on to, and Jack had to go back to school already. Dee Dee and I went on to the GSV boot camp, which was actually 7 weeks. And so this is where we met Michael Moe most directly, and that was a great program. So let me tell you a little bit more.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Screen 360 TV is the film festival model mediated, so it reaches international peers near and far. There's peer-to-peer learning happening in the film festival model. Imagine a theater full of young people and journalists and teachers and parents from around the world watching a film subtitled in English, maybe in French if it's from Iran. And young people are engaged in this almost UN-like atmosphere. And they're after the film, the filmmaker is on stage and they have an opportunity to ask questions. And so they're learning from each other's questions. And this is the incredible part that we really wanted to bring forward in Screen 360 TV, where young people from around the world in Berlin, in Boise, Idaho, in Bahrain, are learning from each other, so that lays the earliest layer of collaboration for the future of potential greater collaboration. Oh goodness, let's see, my controls are not working. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna have to just escape and, oh, there it did, sorry.
Yeah,
Finally did.
quite all right.
There we
No, I
are.
love the idea.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. So what we're doing is providing those immersive experiences like you had with the World Bank and like Doug had as a kid traveling with his father at the State Department, which all kids should have, yet we can't afford them. Who can afford a year abroad? And so Screen 360 TV recognizes that. And of course, why now? As is evidenced by the global issues of systemic racism and xenophobia, which really needed now. So during the Hack for Recovery, we did a lot of customer interviews, and these are some of them. Oh. There we go.
How do we get that incredible learning atmosphere that's at the Berlin Film Festival's children's section to the United States? The larger problem is why we don't have more of those in the United States.
I definitely agree about like how international films can help kids sort of feel more connected.
We've got this huge country with a large public school system, and yet the world is getting smaller, is very globalized, and most of the country, I would dare to say, never interacts with someone who's different than them or speaks another language, etc. So we're trying to provide a service, a product, to take into the school systems to hopefully help mitigate some of that.
I can't think of any better way to communicate with a generation that's grown up on screens. It seems to me that the greatest way to gain empathy for somebody else is to see their lives.
Also would like students to know that there are impactful people in each culture in today's day and age with the education system just as a whole. I feel like they do a bad job of representing other cultures, not just Black culture, but Indigenous culture, Native American culture, every other culture.
From a distance, that same experience that we're dealing with racism, we're dealing with government structures that are frustrating us as non-voting members of the population. I think to be able to engage with students that are in a very different culture but having a very similar experience in a lot of ways would be super valuable.
It's part of my job not just to teach students the language, but to really kind of get them to understand the culture and the cultural differences.
I'm also intrigued by live students somewhere else that they could interact with. That kind of gives them, they have skin in the game now.
One of the hardest things I have is how much time I spend finding these resources.
Film is a way to connect people in a way that I don't think you can by explanation. People don't have the ability to have these kind of experiences, so they have them watching a film. They have them being immersed in someone else's life.
Test it and get their feedback live or however you do it, and it's all pretty real time information that we can use to really mold our project.
Hollywood is fabulous, but Hollywood just keeps retelling the same stories over and over again. And you get a story from India or from Uzbekistan or from, you know, even France. And it has a different cadence. It has a different point of view. It has a different style of storytelling. And I think that's so valuable for kids to experience, especially kids that don't have the chance to travel.
When I find a pre-made thing that fits my class, it's like, you know, heaven sent. It's it's pure gold.
What we're trying to do is harness the power of stories to educate and to really teach kids and children cultural literacy through international films. When they open their eyes to different cultures, it really is memorable for them.
It's not only about learning of different cultures represented on the film, but also how this film creates knowledge of the world.
There we are. And this is how it works. A school registers, they would choose a movie, choose a date, invited other schools. So in the future, all of our registered participants would show their how many students, their goals, and what time of day they prefer to watch, and of course their time zones. And our algorithms would pair them up and connect them so that they can, there's a drop down of classes that are going to be watching this or that are available. And so they choose a time to watch together and they discuss the movie, and the Q&A is moderated. Right now it's quite manual using our MVP, and we want to keep that moderated aspect continuing. And in order to do that, we'll be training people to act as moderators. I've developed 3 international film festivals and have a lot of experience doing that. But in the future, we would like to be embedded in a film school so that we are engaging those emerging filmmakers and producers who want to work for this audience, to have them work with us in the production of Screen 360 TV, in the research of finding the films, and certainly in the engagement of watching the audience understand foreign films in a way that they've never conceived before. And then certainly understanding the researchers who will be watching the audience as well and delivering statistics, data for us to continue to grow and also to report. So this is the market size currently before COVID. We looked at all international schools and all US K-12, focused primarily on international baccalaureate curriculum. US private schools often have both. Jack came through an advanced placement curriculum, and that, along with Common Core, are our curricular lenses through which we choose the films and write our program notes and offer a legend for selecting according to that curricular lens. And you can see that 10% present a healthy annual potential fee. Now, $1,000 is for a school with 4 or more classes using Screen 360 TV. Right now, with our pilot launch, we have classes who are working at $249 per school year, $249 per school year. And so it's a different fee, but once COVID is tamed and we are back, we see that schools will be wanting to work with us in larger numbers because we have great evidence now from our pilot. And you can see several other revenue streams. will be possible once our network is healthy, and we have at least 20 schools working with us, and that's our goal for the end of the year, 20 schools. Now, if we're looking post-COVID, after disease, as Michael Moe calls it, and we're looking at households, schools folded into households. There's 16.2 million in the US. And through GSV, we also learned about the Times of India and their interest in engaging US and India projects. Brand Capital is the branch of Times of India, the venture branch of Times of India. So we've sent them our pitch deck, and we'll be returning to them because we find that this is potentially a really great place to grow. There's 243 million, the most adolescents in the entire world in India. Couple that with the United States. And one of our pilot participants is a class that Jack participated in at Archbishop Midi High School, where the class studies India and then goes to India at the end of the year. And students from India come to the United States. So there's this incredible exchange. And Jack will attest that that was one of the richest learning experiences he ever had. And here we are, we have that rich exchange potential, but now with COVID, we don't have it. What we can do though, is after breakfast, students can watch a film with their cohort in India who's just had their dinner and they're getting ready for bed or doing their homework. So they can still watch a film together. The timing is really great. And they can have that cultural exchange in their living rooms with their families. In fact, outside the class can bring their families to Screen 360 TV, and we encourage that. So if we want to look at really grand scale total addressable markets, we want to look at that model, and 25% for that for an SAM is still quite large, and even 10%, 6.4 million. And so this is what we were talking about, the potential of fusing a generation through cultural exchange in their living room rather than hyper marketing and separating a generation. Let's keep them together with their families and learning together. That's the exciting part about this. And we'll continue to work on that with India. Here, with that example that I just spoke about, at 9 o'clock in the morning in California, 9:30 p.m. in India, imagine the conversation that could be happening between families and learners. It's really exciting to be able to swap the culture. It's low carbon footprint and it's high learning. And I think it's a super win-win opportunity and super exciting. Here are our competitors. Take a look. Canopy is great. And I love what they do. What they don't do is what we do, and offer moderated conversations, post-film conversations. They have great partnerships with filmmakers. I like what they do, and they offer a really decent fee. But we do too, and it will grow as we grow. This is our pilot launch on the 18th of September. We had participants from Ljubljana, Slovenia, from Berlin. Our filmmaker, Andreas Schaefer, joined us from Berlin with his film For einen Moment, for one moment. And we had homeschool participants. Let's see who, and our class from Sparta, New Jersey, the Humanities Academy in Sparta, New Jersey. So right now we have a total of 3 for $750 so far in our very first traction. I'd like to put a $750 bill on the wall if it exists. Maybe we'll just make one and put one up there. But we are confident of the growth and creating artifacts like this one and video as well to show regularly in our social marketing. Testimonial from another teacher and shapeshifter, as David Benjamin calls himself. He's very much engaged both in engineering and education, and has a program called School based in the EU. And he tested Screen 360 TV and recognized the value, the very contemporary value for the necessary conversations that need to be had now about race and reckoning in the United States and abroad. It's not just, we have to recognize that it's not just the United States who are dealing with racism. So we really appreciate having this collegial relationship with David, and he's Stanford. He's a Stanford grad and living in the Bay Area. A couple of my advisors also went to school with him or in a fraternity with him, and we're really pleased to have his focus on us. This is what has been happening so far and what we see in the near future. Back in 2010 and 11, we did research in Berlin in collaboration with the Berlinale's Generation section, where we interviewed more than 120 people from ages 6 to 76 and asked them what their earliest memory of international film was. And through the quickness that they were able to deliver that memory and the vividness with which they were able to remember that memory, we recognized that the cognitive impact was great. So, and that they could speak to us about that memory. So this research buttresses our continued work with Screen 360 TV. We did testing. I developed a 5-country consortium at the Berlinale, and we applied for funding together with Creative Europe, and got greenlit in Belgium, in Brussels. And there was just a little rug pulled out from under at the end. So we know we're very close, and we're known, at least with the Creative Europe Commission in Brussels, which funds arts programs in the the EU. And I've always believed that there should be a partnership with Europe in bringing their films to the United States, which they have stopped. Basically, distributors have stopped sending films to the United States because our domestic product is so great and it takes the theatrical time slots. Hence why we were going around that established institution through the internet. A great thing happened after working with Mark Nelson, Peace Innovation Institute. I'm wondering if you've heard of that. He is a great partner and mentor. He introduced us to Brave Venture Capital. Brave Venture Capital is European-based, Poland and Denmark and Germany. And one of the partners had been a history professor at Stanford. And and then he went into this industry because and he's no longer teaching, but out there helping education further. And they offered us a $250,000 matching fund, and that's what we've been working to fund through a masterclass with Equity Capital Collective, and that's where we developed our $2.8 million valuation. Sarah Batterby. And then that brings us to the Hack for Recovery in June, July, and then further to GSV Bootcamp, and then our pilot launch. And as I mentioned, we have a goal of 20 schools by the end of the school year, knowing full well that most schools generally do their onboarding of new products from March to July, usually. So we know that might be a tough sell, but everything is different now. So we are continuing our customer acquisition through a social media campaign that Jack is heading up, and we're, in fact, Sparta High School learned about us through one of Jack's pictures on Twitter. And so that's how we're getting into the market through that. In the future, this is our cost of goods sold. In the future, we have several international baccalaureate conferences, IB conferences, both in Europe. We're not sure how those are looking yet, but I imagine they're going to be online, and we'll continue focusing on those markets. The film festivals like Berlin and Tallinn Black Nights Film Festival is what it's called. They, in the last 5 years, have developed entrepreneur programs and film innovation programs. So there's opportunities to pitch at several film festivals. And so we will be applying to that. Our breakdown tables of cost of goods sold initially, of course, with our promotions are going to be about 10,000 with first year film licenses, honoraria for filmmakers to appear, to do a Q&A, about 28,000. We think it's pretty modest. And cost of goods, the manufacturing, stickers, magnets, postage to send an actual physical thing to classrooms. Right now, it's all going to be digital, so we can erase that $1,000 there. We, on our advisory board, we have 2 incredible graphic designers who can create these stickers for us, and we can send these out digitally, and they'll be cool. So they'll want to exchange them, and that's on our to-do list yet. But up until now, we've expended $0 actual dollars, just in time, and we have not spent anything yet. So let me tell you about our advisory board. David Peters and Jean-Benoit Levy, these are the 2 designers in San Francisco who have been with Screen 360 TV since it was Screen 360 TV Films for Children of the World, a brick and mortar traveling film festival that started at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco and would go up the California coast to Sonoma, then to Portland, Oregon, and rural Oregon. I just want to mention the rural. We've done work in rural Oregon, and we recognize the extreme value, as Dee Dee mentioned, in rural places of the United States. So right now in our outreach, we're reaching out to other Spartas in the world, and not only Sparta, Greece, but also Sparta, Missouri, and Sparta, Mississippi. And there's one more Sparta. Oh, there's a Sparta in Ohio, but we found that it's an unincorporated area. But so we are taking creative and fun approaches like that, and even asking our Sparta High School participants to write the other Spartas and say, come join us. So really to exercise that invitation and their ownership of that engagement of reaching out to their peers. And so that is part of the design that we started in the beginning with David and Jean-Benoit. And you can see this, our logo design came from Jean-Benoit, and David is helping design strategy, and they're constantly keeping an eye on the things that we're putting out. Gabriel Adauto is one of 2 of our tech advisors. He's CTO at Motion Math Games, which was recently acquired by a very old company in Boston called Curriculum Associates. And we hope that in the future, Curriculum Associates will also look at Screen 360 TV. Paul Spiegel is a longtime colleague, friend from Film World in San Francisco. He's advised me on fair use for my documentaries, and he has agreed to come on as our counsel. Daryl Walker and Chris Liano, I'll mention them together because I went to grammar school with them in the Haight-Ashbury, and our classroom was a cross-section of the world. And it was a little parochial school, not a lot of money, but we knew each other and we recognized that that is the vision of something that can still happen in the world. And that's why they're working with me together. And Daryl is a developing and financing advisor for CalPERS. And so he has been instrumental in opening his LinkedIn contacts to me. And it was through him actually that we had a recent face-to-face with Andreessen Horowitz. And Chris holds 14 patents at Cisco. And so he along with Gabrielle will help us with our first hire of a CTO. And up until now, Jack has introduced us to a software engineer that he's worked with before. And we're hoping to develop iOS and Android software to interface with the current interface now, to integrate with the current interface. But that's about $18,000, and so we haven't gone to that point yet. Bill Delzell, you saw him noted in our pitch video. He is the founder of Lightgrid Studios along with Scott Miniman. And Lightgrid Studio is a robotically operated lighting system for studios. And we want the Lightgrid to be a studio for our studio-based programming for Screen 360 TV. So we would be a live studio audience beaming in our classrooms around the world and having live Screen 360 TV events. So I believe that is everything, and I welcome your questions. We welcome your questions. You can go ahead, everybody can unmute and participate in the discussion.
So the licensing for the films,
Yes.
I was surprised it was that reasonable. What does a license look like for a film like like you would be using?
Really good question, Dean. So as I said, I've been programming films for 3 children's film festivals and attend the Berlin Film Festival annually. So I have face-to-face contact with filmmakers, and this is what film programmers do. Generally, first run films, they want to see their feature films. They want to see their theatrical run. Difficult now, but we are showing mainly short films, and short films don't get the play generally, and that fits best into a classroom situation that can be anywhere from 40 minutes to 90 minutes. Fortunately, those that we're working with are 65 to 90 minutes. And but the films, short films then are excellent launching points for the conversation, and still allows the teacher the opportunity to sort of bring in, orient the students, and then to debrief them afterwards. So the short films are best, and there is a plethora of them. And my contact with attending the Berlin Film Festival annually, building a network over 25 years. Dee Dee also is programming the Illuminate Film Festival in Ohio, and she's developing those networks. Jack, of course, in the film program at USC, is developing those networks of short films. They just don't get their due, and now is their time, and we have the place for them. And there are archives of them internationally, and like I said, they just haven't had a place to show in the United States. And so we are giving them that. Feature films, yes, we will show them in chapters. And there are also archives of those films internationally. And I'm developing, and I have developed relationships with those archives and the Danish Film Institute and the Swedish Film Archive, which is actually a big one and takes all of the Nordic countries' archives. And it's a pretty heavy hitter. And yes, will take some time to develop a trusting relationship with them, but I have already been doing that in my further, my earlier film festivals. So I think, you know, the honorarium, staying firm with a flat fee, will be welcomed by most filmmakers, showing their short films, their first films out of graduate school, for instance, and those who don't, of course, we won't show them, but I think there are plenty out there. And up until now, we've been sourcing YouTube, and I can show you. Didi, any idea of how many films we have on our list currently? I have 16 currently up. Let me show you. Just go right to Screen 360 TV. Whoops. Bring you down here. I'll get to my controls. And we'll go to the, can you see that? I'm going to go to our 2020 program. There we are. And you can see our, just put that up there. There's our curricular legend. Let me go there just for a moment, and then we'll go back. So here is a fusion of all three of those curricula: ethics, justice, and culture, forming with identity. This was great. This is something we've been working on really since the beginning, how to fuse those to make it simple for teachers, parents, students to access. And Jack suddenly was able to put those together really great. I really appreciate that. And so Didi has been addressing it too regularly and adding to that. So this one in particular, the human ingenuity and arts and aesthetics, those go together so well. The arts and aesthetics is AP, and the human ingenuity is the IB. And articulating the ways in which we discover and express ideas and feelings, nature, culture. It's broad, but then very, very succinct, and I think quite useful. And I don't see that this kind of curricular lens. There is one, it is called, one competitor, SEMA. SEMA is doing that, and they're actually in Los Angeles and in Germany. Very interesting that they have this this couplet like we do, the German influence as well. But they are focusing on documentaries. We don't focus only on documentaries. We work with both, and features as well as good animation. You see this film, Blind Vaisha, is excellent. A girl who is born into the world with one eye that sees the past and one eye that sees the future. And so it's an excellent quandary for a young person as they're developing their identity and their personal aesthetic. Are they going to, are they taken by the Renaissance era, or are they taken by the future? And these are great questions to ask oneself in developing identity. Here, there's a Miss World Language and Culture. Arabic is not one of the typical world languages that's offered in school, but we want to recognize it as such. Mark Smolowitz, a director we know, is doing an incredible work called The G Word, The Gifted Word, and he's looking particularly at Black intelligence. Here's one that's incredible from Vice magazine, actually, Vice broadly, City of No Men, a city in Africa developed by women who were tired of being abused. And it's an incredible, it's a magazine, sort of a magazine, but it is incredible. Looking at Borders, Cycling the Frame, Cynthia Beat, who is known in Europe and in Berlin, but not very well known in the United States as a filmmaker. And she did work with Tilda Swinton at 20-year intervals around the Berlin Wall. So that gives you an example. Here's a Spanish language film, and French language films we are focusing on as well. One of our pilot participants is a French class, and we just finished watching Foutaise from Jean-Pierre Jeunet, and this was the study for a section, the beginning section of the film Amélie. And so it's not only rich for the language, but also rich for the filmmaking lore involved there. So that's an example of some of the films that we're showing. Social justice is very strong here. Here's another film, Exit Right from it's wrong, it's not, it is Germany, actually. I thought it was Belgium, but it is Germany, it's southern Germany. So these are films that I was able to get through Kiss Kiss, which is a consortium of short film distributors in Europe. And I want to work with them more closely. And but I've written them, asked them, I said, you know, it's fine that we use these films. And I like to let the filmmaker know that Screen 360 TV is using their film from YouTube, and they either give us a thumbs up, I invite them to join us. And so, yeah, most of it is permission is granted to use their short films. Let's see, what other questions might you have about that? I'll go back to our.
So with respect to connecting with the schools and kind of bringing them on board, most of that is done through social media, is that correct?
Social media and letters. Yeah, I'm cold calling right now, and Dee Dee is too. It's you know, so Jack, you might be familiar with this. This may be a long shot, but George Lucas is doing, I forget what it is. It's a center, or it's I think being built close to the Coliseum. Do you know what I'm talking about? Oh, it's a new one.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's a $1 billion project,
Right.
and it's about storytelling and all that. I don't. I have to
Is that the
think about-
Center for Scholars and Storytellers that Yalda Uls is running? That's
I don't know.
UCLA. I think that's UCLA, but I wonder.
Yeah, no, this was something he planned to do a almost like a interactive museum aimed at particularly children, to encourage storytelling in that. And there was a competition, and it came down to Chicago and Los Angeles. So they're doing it in LA and you know, basically on the campus of USC. And I'm just wondering, I can ask around about it. My guess is it's probably already, construction has begun, I would think. But there might be a good opportunity for you there. And I'm guessing that the cinema school at USC probably has a connection to that. I don't know. When you had mentioned being connected to a cinema school, there's one possibility. There's not at USC not a lot of interaction with the the School of Cinema. It's very much an entity unto itself. We haven't really been able to crack that, but could ask some folks there too if they could be helpful, and maybe too. I don't know, Jack, if you have any inroads there, but no, I think I understand what you're doing. There was another company, and it was I cannot recall the name, but they developed a partnership with Rossier School of Education in something called Center Edge.
Center Edge.
Which just tries to bring together folks who want to do kind of innovative things in education. And they, but it ended up being kind of a one-off thing. They got kind of the cooperation of the folks who made Hidden Figures, had an event pre-COVID where they brought in school kids from LA Unified, many of them girls. And I think that was a kind of a big success, but not much happened after that, as far as I know. So that's kind of the gist of what I know about this kind of the sector that you're operating in. But if you want to, so we're doing, still doing the application process for the third cohort of Adventures. And if you need some background on it, happy to send it to you. If you want to apply, encourage you to do that. If you have any questions, let me know, but I can send you that information if you don't have it.
Yeah, please.
I can't recall whether we went through that or not.
How long is the engagement?
It's usually, not usually, it's kind of one event a week. It's a workshop. You participate in it if you wish. If it's not of interest to you, you don't. And take a break over the Christmas, New Year holiday, and then that builds up. We do at USC Demo Day. I don't know what that will be like this year. I imagine it's online. We do. We have like a dedicated pitch event there. You can try it, and then we use between that and ASU GSB, and who knows what will happen there again. In April, we utilize the School for Dramatic Arts to kind of do some workshops and even individualized training on presentations. And because we'll have some companies that have raised several $1 million and others that have raised very little, if nothing. And we want that diversity as well. So there are folks who are, we recognize at the end of the day, that you all have to raise funding. So we try and help with that to the extent we can. And actually, it's ended up being pretty successful, just the way we've approached it.
Okay.
But and so then we wind up the program after GSV. But we did, when it was clear that ASU GSV was not going to be held, I think we probably did the first virtual pitch event in EdTech. We did that back in like February or something like that.
Okay.
And, again, since the program was virtual anyway, the founders were used to communicating in that respect. And then, by the way, we did a kind of the first of several virtual pitch events for women founders in EdTech. Did that in May. Next week, we're doing one for founders of color in EdTech. So we're doing things like that. But yeah, no, the programs, the program itself is not meant to take a lot of your time. It's designed such that as opportunities kind of become available to you, that we make available to you, that you talk to us about it, that you seize them and go with it. And we found that that works really well. So it's kind of very opportunistic in that respect. Because again, you have a company to run. You have a lot of
Right.
things to work out on your own. And to the extent we can help with that, we do. That's sort of it. The application period is kind of to the end of this week.
Okay.
But if you want to, we've kind of gone back and forth here. So if that's something you're interested in, you want to do it, it takes you a little bit of extra time, just let me know.
Okay.
I don't want to, no problem. But I'll send that to you.
Please do, because I think it would be wise for us to have some roots in with USC in the Los Angeles area, and with your good guidance. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. And I know Jack has spoken about when opportunities can happen for us to present in person, we would certainly do that, but even virtually.
Yeah, it's gone, like for instance, when we did our virtual pitch event, geez, I think we do these things, including when it's live, we do them invite only. We only invite, kind of friends who are investors in that. I think we had 70.
Okay.
So we practically, and once a month we convene the, I think we're the only ones that do this, kind of a gathering of ed tech venture investors who just want to connect with one another, and it's kind of very private, and we discuss, just a few things that are of interest to them. So, because those relationships go back a long way. GSV participates in that. So, we aim to put you in touch with folks like that.
Yeah.
You may, I mean, in your situation, you're a lot better placed to have made connections like that, but quite a few of the entrepreneurs that are in the program do not. And so for them, it's really helpful. I mean, particularly if you're in Rwanda or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So that's kind of the situation. But it's not meant to be highly formalized, if you will.
Oh, well, I think it's something that would fit very well right now, and we'd appreciate your continued insight. So yes, please do send that, and I will ask for an extension from the end of the week, because there are a few deadlines for the end of the week. But I would also like to ask you particularly about the market slides. Were these clear for you?
Yeah, so I've done venture for 20 some years, and it's a typical slide, and I typically pay very little attention to it.
Which one do you pay most attention to? This one?
I think most investors would tell you this. They're usually exaggerated, and that's necessarily done on purpose or whatever, but kind of life gets in the way, and it's good to see, kind of, generally speaking, where this might lead, and total addressable markets, important. I know the India market a bit, so it's not, I know what the size is and all that, and I know the difficulty of accessing places like that. So it's important that you have those slides, but we don't really pay a whole lot of attention to it.
No,
I'm just being very, very, very clear. The slide you have up now, I think is is more important. But I one, I think the team, you have a very good team, and you all have great varied experience. That to me is most important. Like, do you understand the market that you're in? Selling to schools is super difficult.
Yeah.
And like I can tell you, as a venture investor, I never invested in K-12 because it's at least in the U.S. it's a mess. And usually you end up going to private schools, parochial schools, because like try selling into LA Unified.
Yeah. No, we know.
It
Right.
would be a complete waste of your time. Although I think with what you're doing, one thing that occurred to me, your entree may even be more along the lines of having a local philanthropy fund what you're doing for local schools. I mean, this is a huge one, but there's the community whatever for Los Angeles, so there'd probably there'd be one like that in Fresno or Irvine or whatever. If you could find, it was just a guess on my part, if you could find inroads to some of those and make the connection with, or connect with one of those and then connect to the school and then to one of these folks.
Yeah.
That's not an expensive play for them. But I don't know either at this, given COVID and that, whether they're being hit up for all sorts of things like this. But I think, in one sense too, your timing's like super good because you know this better than me. But from my kids are all grown, and I'm so thankful for that. But even in some of the best schools in Orange County and around here, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Kids are just keeping their attention. I mean, something like this I would have loved as a kid, and it's just such.
Do you recall the CBS Children's Film Festival? It was on Saturdays, sometimes Sundays. It wasn't the after-school special. It was an international film program that was on from, I want to say maybe even 69 to about 87. That's late, but I think spottily on 87.
I recall something, I could tell you the cartoons. I recall something like that now, actually.
Yeah.
I can't, and I probably would have watched it. But and that's I mean, my word, that was incredibly unique. And that's what kind of brought me back to the Lucas Center too. And I know they get hit up, I'm sure.
Sure.
Incredibly, and they have Edutopia is theirs.
Then Herman Milton Chen was the director there, and I've talked with him a few times, but not.
Yeah, that might even be a connection. I'm going to guess they need content. It's a $1 billion museum, if you will.
Yeah.
So they're going to need a lot of interactive stuff. Now maybe they have it, or even just letting them know that you're around, and maybe perhaps some of the other organizations or companies that you mentioned as type of competitors. That by the way, that slide's always useful too.
The competitor slide.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we kind of expect that.
Yeah.
I don't, I would have to really look at that. And it just also goes to show that you've done your work.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, a lot of it's up to you. How you respond to that.
Well, I wonder about.
You all know what you all know what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
clearly.
the which doors to knock on is a
It's hard.
question, because there's
hard.
also, we're talking about family swapping culture, and so this is really households outside of the schools. And I mean, it's maybe right now, I think we go towards both of them, and whichever one opens the door and says, yeah, come in, then that's where.
Yeah, you have to be opportunistic. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at all these, particularly in Southern California. I'm going to guess in Northern California it's the same. All these pods that have sprung up,
Right.
with parents who are basically trying to get their kids educated.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they need content because the kids are driving them nuts.
We're addressing those pods via Facebook groups and
Yeah, I mean, if you can, like, I don't know enough about what's happening there. I think there may be already companies, I'm going to guess there are already companies that have grown up to kind of feed that market with, utilizing, teachers who are doing that on the side or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could find that. I don't see that going away. That's just me, because the response of the school districts has been, almost uniformly disastrous.
Yeah.
So
I want to pay attention.
I think
Oh,
it's no, please.
Pay attention to the time, because I know Jack had a
Yeah,
meeting.
and I have to go as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But
Thank you.
anyway, let's just start thinking about things like that, because the landscape has shifted a lot, and you offer really good content, and really unique kind of things that people would, I think, be willing to pay for it. But it's genuinely hard getting that word out. But maybe through social media, you can, if you can kind of crack the pod thing.
Yeah, I once got in touch with one of the ministers of culture for the European Union via Twitter, and she sent an envoy to meet with me at the Berlin Film Festival. And so we're going to keep going with the Twitter and social media, etc. And just saying, putting the message out there.
Yeah, no, I think, and you'll figure it out. Anyway, what a delight it was to meet you all. So I appreciate it.
Likewise, yeah, thank you, and please do send the application.
Yeah, sure. It'll be a link to it, and if you have any questions, ask me. It's not meant to be. There are a few questions for sure, but you don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it. I just should tell you then what we do is we have evaluators go through it. We don't seek, we don't market it very highly at all, because we don't want to be inundated with 100-some applications.
Yeah. Okay.
So we kind of cherry pick. So
okay, good.
I've cherry picked you all, if that makes sense. So.
That's good. And I'll make sure. I'll make sure that we note that we've spoken with you already.
Yeah, it will ask you that, but
okay.
Yes, but no, thanks for the time and for being patient with getting in touch.
Oh, of course. We so appreciate the time. Thank you, and look forward to the next time.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Dean.
Bye. Bye.
Okay. Hi, Dee Dee. How are you? Oh, bye. Okay.